So, I would like to know how many of you are running Elasticsearch in your companies. How many are planning to run Elasticsearch in your companies? And how many of you dealt with relational databases? Or know how it is? Okay, perfect. So when I started working for this company, which is currently called iHeartRadio, it used to be called Clear Channel Communications. I started working as DBA for relational databases. And at some point, somebody told me that I should take a look at MongoDB. That was my first NoSQL database. And I went through literally cultural shock. When I started reading a book about MongoDB, I was like, no transactions? It can't be. I literally closed the book and I just, I'm not gonna, this is BS. It can't work, it can't be used. Where can you use the system without transactions? Tell me, where? It's impossible. So it was quite a shock to me, and I never told it to guys, but I thought maybe I should just, this seems like total BS. Maybe I should just quit and go work for some bank and be happy doing with the SQL databases. But I stayed, and it was quite a thrilling ride. At some point, the new system that came under my management was Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch deals with, it kind of, it's table, like relational database has tables. And in Elasticsearch, and you can index the table. So you have table and you can index it. In Elasticsearch is kind of opposite. Elasticsearch doesn't think that original data is important. What is important is index data, being able to find the data. So when you load data into the Elasticsearch, it actually creates indexes. And you also can save the original data if you want. But not always. You can just tell Elasticsearch save a few fields so you can find original data in some other database. You don't have to. So essentially you have index. Instead of table, you have index and maybe some original data if you want to. Elasticsearch runs also, the structure is different. I kind of got used to one server that handles all the data in one place. Here the data is kind of distributed between several processes. Each process it's called a node, and usually it runs on separate virtual server or physical server, but you can run several nodes on one server, and that would be fine. So the problem with in this situation, you have to configure every server or every node separately. So you have to create a configuration file, you have to install plugins, you have to do all this stuff. But since it's not one server, you have to think about it. Okay, now when something happens, when developer comes to you and says, I need to add one more configuration parameter to Elasticsearch configuration file, you actually have to go, and if you have 5 nodes, you have to go SSH to every node, change VI or whatever editor you're using, change this parameter or add this parameter, restart Elasticsearch, make sure that it's restarted fine, and then go to another server, do the same thing. And if you have more than one cluster of Elasticsearch, which you probably would have, because you would have staging, and production, or QA and production, it becomes quite a nightmare, because it will become your full-time job, just going into the servers, changing something, restarting, and then you forget to do something on this server, and then then it becomes a disaster. So when I started doing Elasticsearch, developers came to me, and AMP is our main application that runs behind our application, iHeart application. So AMP is it's kind of our main backend. It consists of several systems, consists of the code, and they wanted to use the Elasticsearch. So okay, no problem. I created 3 clusters, and production cluster has actually 7 servers. Staging cluster has 3 servers, and development cluster has 3 servers. Then, second kind of group of developers came to me. It's called Radio Aided. I just shortened it here, RE. And they wanted their own clusters. They don't want it to be on the same cluster with AMP because they didn't want to, screw up their data, and AMP did not want them because they were afraid that, they are going to screw up their data. So, okay, fine, I have 6 clusters. And each of them has, several servers. Okay, no problem. Then Marvel came along. And our EVP, Lasse, he really likes, shiny presentations with shiny kind of, tools that, that show you in a nice graphs and nice, tags how system behaves. So he really liked it. We installed Marvel. Unfortunately, we have to install separate Marvel cluster for each of your clusters. So in the result, and Marvel, it's kind of a tool that allows you to monitor your Elasticsearch cluster, and it itself stores this monitoring information in the Elasticsearch. So for each Marvel, I have to create another Elasticsearch cluster. Of course, it wasn't that big, so I can use just one server because it's not that important. If it crashes, I just, recreate, no problem. Okay, no problem. Then like this stack, Elasticsearch, log/Kibana came along. Log/Kibana allows you to collect information from your logs on all of your systems and then save it to Elasticsearch again. And then you can do a lot of nice things to it. But that resulted in more Elasticsearch clusters. And then other developers came to me and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to create Elasticsearch cluster and I will just kind of experiment. And I want to have Elasticsearch cluster that runs latest version because you're not up to date. You're running the old version. So we had so many clusters. Currently, we have more than 20. In my, I don't even know exact number. I wanted to calculate, but I forgot. So it becomes quite a nightmare. So if you guys decided to run Elasticsearch, if you're DevOps, first thing that you should think about is configuration software. If you're using Puppet, if you're using Chef, if you're using Salt, fine. If you're not using any of these systems, just come up with your own scripts. You should not be going into each server and making, changes manually. Just write some script that would automatically SSH to all the servers and do whatever, operations necessary for Elasticsearch configuration file to be updated and Elasticsearch restarted. In Chef, we came up with this idea. We have Chef in general. How many of you know what Chef is? Okay, so Chef is configuration software that allows you to define a node, which usually is separate server, and it allows you to specify what scripts, installation scripts run on this node, and what parameters they use for that particular node. So this is an example of the node, and if you noted, there is role, ES cluster production, long name. So this node will be part of this Elasticsearch cluster. This Elasticsearch cluster is defined as a role. In Chef, you can define a role, and the main part of the role is actually run list. If you look down there, run list, it runs Elasticsearch role. Elasticsearch role would run several scripts. It would install Elasticsearch. If it's not installed, it will create configuration file. It will install some plugins if they needed to be installed. But all the parameters it will take from this role. So this role will be assigned to all 7 production nodes. In this way, you will have everything exactly the same across all the nodes. So for example, cluster name should be the same on all the nodes. Elasticsearch version should be the same on all the nodes. Install tag is actually our software. So we're doing a lot of interesting things. We're writing our own plugins. And Elasticsearch install tag just lets the installation script know where to pull the latest version. It's kind of version of the plugin. You also can specify a number of master nodes and number of replicas, and it's all will be the same across all the nodes in the cluster. Also, we have, I just don't want to go into more details, but main idea is if you're trying to run Elasticsearch or setting up to run Elasticsearch, come up with the idea how to specify parameters in one place for all the nodes in the same cluster. Otherwise, you will be just swamped. You'll be doing it all the time, 24 hours a day, trying to configure your Elasticsearch clusters. And honestly, Elasticsearch is the only system that for some reason, just exploded in our company, because we have Mongo, we have Cassandra, but none of them are used as wide as Elasticsearch. So now currently when developers, and that would allow you to kind of simplify things. So when the developer comes to you and says, okay, I want an Elasticsearch cluster, I want to try something out, you would be able just to ask 6 questions and pretty much set up Elasticsearch cluster according to the answers. So you'll have questions are listed here, and that's pretty much it. So this is Nagios monitoring it automatically. You can configure it to automatically send you notifications when something bad happens to your cluster. You can monitor number of shards. You can monitor number of replicas. You can monitor number of shards per cluster, because these systems are kind of difficult to manage in a sense that any developer can come in and do something really bad to it. For some reason they decide to change number of replicas to 0, which means your data is not redundant anymore. So which means if one of the shards becomes corrupt, you have to restore from the backup. So you have to kind of be diligent about that in order for system to be reliable. Of course, you also need to monitor general parameters for the server. I have all the laptops, so it doesn't allow me to scale very well. So this is an example how we're monitoring our system. We monitor all the interfaces. We monitor that kind of general Linux stuff. Additionally, I monitor it's kind of advanced. It's called Elasticsearch Advanced. I monitor that number of replicas is set to the number that I know about. It also checks the cluster if it's and alerts me if it becomes yellow or red, because Elasticsearch allows you to kind of with one request to see health of your cluster. So this is Marvel. We highly recommend Marvel. Very good. And it's kind of at a glance, this is summary, and even at a glance you can see that my production cluster is not very healthy, because although it has 7 nodes, but CPU is running around 20% on many of them, which is very, very high CPU usage. Although number of requests is not that high. If you see a number of requests, it's around 500 per second, which is not that, you can do much better than that. And I swear to God, I didn't plan it, but right here we have a drop. We just had an outage about 2 hours ago. Yeah, I swear I didn't plan it. I didn't do it for presentation. But literally before start presentation, we had an outage. So it kind of shows you information. It's also very useful. It kind of has information about what happened to the cluster, like during the time period. You can see what happened to the cluster, and you can actually see that cluster became red at some point. And you can click and see what was the status of the cluster at that moment. What happened? What shards were not available that it became red? This is very good feature, and this is very good system for monitor. I really like it. You can use head plugins. We use it a lot to show information about your shards. So here in the cluster I have 3 nodes on the left, and for each index it shows you information about the shards. Currently it's this is simplified cluster. We only have 1 shard per index, so we don't break our indexes into smaller pieces. I'm not gonna go into details why we should be breaking them into smaller pieces, but we are not doing it right now. So it's shard number 0. Usually if you have more shards, it would show you 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, something like that. It shows you primary shards, the shards that are taking the write requests. And this is kind of slave shards that are taking the read requests. It's not like Mongo. It's not like you have one server that takes all the writes and all other servers are slaves. It's not like MySQL when you have one server that is master that takes writes and all other servers are slaves and you can read from them only, you cannot update them. It's on shard level. One shard is primary and takes writes, and the other shards are secondary. They are like slave shards. They only take read requests. You can see what server is master, so it's a great way to see your information. So questions?
I'm sorry, are you guys using virtual or physical?
We are using virtual and physical. We are using currently for production the cluster that I showed you in Marvel. It's all physical servers, but we are planning on using virtual in staging and development, and we are planning to use hopefully virtual in new data center. But quite honestly, we haven't run on virtual kind of. We did not run production cluster with the full load. We don't know how it's going.
What kind of backup are you guys using? Like you do snapshots to a different, like an NFS, or?
We are doing snapshots. We are copying our snapshots to the paying company that copies them to some Phoenix location, something like that. So in case something happens to our data center, we have backups. We also have like snapshots we're currently testing because it's quite embarrassing, but just we recently upgraded to version 1.4 from version 0.90.3, and 0.90.3 did not have snapshots. So what we did, we stopped the rebalancer and we just copied the data files into a separate location. It wasn't a very good method. Currently, we're switching to snapshots.
Okay, thank you.
Do you also have the multi-data center, or is just the one data center?
It's one data center. Yeah, we're building another one. But we don't have cross-data center replication yet.
Is there a reason you have a separate cluster for Marble?
Yes. We don't want to have situation when our cluster goes down and we have zero monitoring information about it. So if we store information, like monitoring information that Marble uses in the same cluster, when this cluster, for something happens to it, it goes down, we still want to have what happened to it, what was it overloaded with CPU time or something like that. And that separate Elasticsearch cluster will allow us to see it. Unfortunately, the thing that kind of bugged me a lot, you have to have one Elasticsearch, Marvel Elasticsearch cluster per your main cluster, which kind of annoying because you essentially quickly double amount of clusters in the company. Hopefully they promised me that they're going to change that. So we may have just one single Marvel cluster for all our clusters.
And how often do you guys plan on taking snapshots when you do implement it?
Currently, my requirements are to take once a day, not often.
Any other questions?
I saw that you guys are using multi-master mode in the cluster, right? So are those nodes are master enabled or really master?
So nodes, master node, it's kind of misleading because master node is not node that only takes writes. Master node is a node that's responsible for maintaining information about the whole cluster. It maintains information about where the shards are located, what shards are primary or secondary, but it's one master node that maintains information about the cluster. It has it has to do with the data, but it's not about the data. Master and slaves, or kind of primary and secondary shards, go on a shard level.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking that question is because recently we also got the production startup of ELK, and we got into the situation because we are on AWS cloud, so like upscale, auto scaling up, down, and we got into a situation where we had two master nodes and then our snapshots kind of not correct.
Yes.
So what do you do around that problem?
So you had two masters, you had split brain situation, right?
We got into that situation, and then they recommended that you should have one master and every other node as a master enabled, and you should have a definition around that saying that the next node can be master if the master goes down, only if the X number of nodes are electing that node,
right,
another node to be mastered, which is master enabled.
So there is a parameter in Elasticsearch cluster. It's minimum master nodes.
Yeah, so that's what my question. Like, if you have minimum master node as 5, that means 5 nodes are working as a master?
No,
and
no, no,
then
no. It means 5. I think it's kind of 5 only. You need to have 5 nodes in a cluster to be able to select
Okay.
a master.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that answers, yes. So
Yes.
okay. So you take snapshots only on the master node all the time, right? Which is
No.
elected to be master for at that point in time.
Actually, currently we just run on one of the nodes snapshot.
Okay.
We don't bother running.
So you
on
don't
master.
get into the situation of having the snapshot not
No.
similar to the exact version of the data.
No, but what we are doing, what this parameters allows you to take care of. If you, for example, you have 7 nodes in the cluster, and your cluster got split, so like 3 nodes talking to each other, and these 4 nodes talking to each other. If your parameter is set to 4, only this cluster will be able to elect master, and this cluster will be masterless, and then you will not be able to communicate with it. It will just, go dark. So you will not be in a situation, if my backups run on this part, my backups will fail, and I will have to log in and see why they failed.
Okay.
There will never be a situation when we have 2 masters
Okay.
with this parameter.
Okay. Thank you.